Hello, everybody. Welcome to the ÉISG podcast, an intern survival guide, where we teach you how to survive in Paris and during an internship at an indie festival. We have new hosts every week with different topics each time, ranging from music, fashion, tourism, but above all, independent cinema. We hope you like today's episode. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the next edition of ÉISG's Intern Survival Guide. Warning: this podcast occasionally contains strong language which may be unsuitable for children, unusual humor which may be unsuitable for adults, and lots of LGBTQ plus jokes which may be unsuitable for assholes.
So, welcome to another episode of ÉISG's Intern Survival Guide. And today we have two hosts, me, Julia, and
me, Luana.
And we will be discussing the symbolism of color in film. A topic really broad, but we will try to make it a bit more precise and explain what we mean by that. And yeah, we would like to start by maybe explaining first few associations with colors. What do colors mean for you? Let's say, what's your first thought with the color red?
Well, red, when I think of red, I think of intensity.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Could be in a good way, like love, passion, or even rage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, because the first association for many is love, but also red is the color of hate, the color of anger. For example, to me, the connotation that I have, a really strong one, is you know, when in cartoons where a character gets like really, really angry, and the old ones especially, they just like their head explodes, their ears go blowing off, then their face gets all red. So yeah, that's the first one.
Yeah, I feel that colors are a really interesting resource for explaining things that don't necessarily need to be spoken about.
Definitely. I could see that.
Yeah, even the absence of it, maybe. The absence of color is also a creative choice.
It is, and we will get to that later. But right now, I think we could proceed to the first color, which is the color red.
Well, speaking about red, I can only think about In the Mood for Love, the film from Wong Kar-wai. And I feel that in this case, red expresses precisely this feeling of the unspoken. Since In the Mood for Love, it's a film about the interest, about the conquest of getting to know someone, about the intensity of a relationship. I think red expresses it really well. We can see red all over in the film, in the props, in the background, in the household items, even the chopsticks they use for eating are red. So using red as a color that expresses sensuality, I think it's a really interesting resource used by Wong Kar-wai to express that it is an erotic relationship between them, because it's not a pornographic one. They don't need to show to express, and I feel red is a great use of this.
Definitely. And also it's interesting how relationship in that film was based off of this red, off of this passion, off of this love. But if you look, I don't know, to Chungking Express, where this wasn't really love, it was more of an obsession with like breaking into the man's flat, this kind of secrecy, and there the color scheme is much different. It doesn't have that feeling, that love that in the Mood for Love has. So I think I mean the use of color by this director is really it should be an episode itself, and that was in the plans, but maybe someday. And yeah, I think this is a really strong example, and maybe you also have something that really depicts the kind of the other side, the insanity or the hatred of the color red.
Yeah, I feel that we can use red for all of these reasons. For example, I can also think about the movie Climax from Gaspar Noé.
Yeah.
And basically, it's not only red, but red in all of the color spectrum in the movie, because the movie starts actually with these red tones, warmer tones, a lot of oranges, yellows, to express I interpret it that way at least, to express the heat, actually, the intensity between the dancers. It's a movie about all of these dancers practicing, but then as soon as things get a little creepy, let's say, things start to get a little bit weird, the color scheme gets colder. It's darker tones. Definitely. Which express the despair and the madness.
Yeah, it's interesting how kind of it starts with this very intense color and then breaks down into something more not so obvious, something more ambiguous. Yeah,
that's it.
I could see that. Yeah, and when we talk about passion, then we can also switch to the subject of this lack of passion. And I think a color that describes the lack of passion, this kind of distress, but I would say blandness and uncertainty, is the color red, or not red, green or blue. And this I could definitely see by movies of Tarkovsky, by Stucker from 1979, and how this whole sequence, this whole movie is the main color scheme. The color scheme is very natural, but what dominates is blue and green, and how the whole film itself is about dreaming. It's about this uncertainty of what's happening, about this undiscovered kind of land. And I think it holds so much power, and if this film was shot with very bright lighting, very strong colors, it wouldn't have been the same, and it wouldn't have the same power that it has right now.
It's really interesting, actually. I never watched any of Tarkovsky films. I need to.
It's a super interesting subgenre of film, which is kind of Soviet hyper realistic, but also these very dreamy films, as I said. I mean, if you look at the Soviet times, I think the authors were kind of trying to replicate and materialize the reality that they were living in, which was this very bleak and very grey.
There's also actually, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, Landscape in the Mist. It's by Theo Angelopoulos. He's a Greek director, and basically, as the name shows, it's a movie marked by this misty tones, but also the misty times. You can see the sky is always a bit grayish, bluish, and I think this also expresses in a really interesting way the state of things, like the internal life of the characters.
Definitely.
And I think it's a really interesting resource.
Yeah,
actually.
I see that, and also when we go away from this mistiness to more creepiness, we end up in like post-apocalyptic movies, like Matrix, for example. This whole film is. Although I watched it like a really long time ago, I watched it when I was like 8 or 9. I barely remember this, like a fever dream, but I mean, I think that was also the effect, that that was the intention. And the thing that I remembered the most was this greenish kind of society is falling apart, and also this mystery. And I feel like post-apos definitely work the best with green color schemes.
And also darker tones. Well, speaking of which, how about black and white movies?
Yeah, I mean that's like a topic it's such a broad topic, and I think it is really repulsant to the average non-cinema nerd viewer that when they see like a black and white movie, they think, okay, it's gonna be pretentious. I don't want to watch this. It's gonna be like,
or it's pretentious, or it's old and we don't need to watch it.
Exactly, or it's all those like Metropolis, 3.5 hours, no dialogue, no sound. That's I think is the best connection. But as we today will prove, it's not just that. It's much more than that. And what are your first thoughts when you think, okay, I see a black and white film?
I don't know. I think we also have to take in consideration the fact that not until recently, let's say in the history of cinema, the the colored film wasn't a choice, wasn't a stylistic choice. It was a necessity. So all films were in black and white, and then when it became a possibility to insert colors in our films, choosing black and white started. Here it goes. It started to be an option. Yeah. And
why do people choose this option? I think one thing that I can definitely say, and I would like to see more, is war movies being shown in black and white. And I mean, I guess you can consider Schindler's List a war movie. It's not like specifically a military movie. It's an anti-war movie. It's a movie in a period of war. But I think war and reality of an armed conflict is something that requires the viewer to solely focus on the action and solely focus on what's happening in front of their eyes, without focusing on how beautiful the color scheme is, how pretty the set is. So I think the choice of black and white in Schindler's List was the most definite choice.
At the same time, I don't know, I think choosing black and white also directs our attention to the contrast, to the nuances, to the lighting, and
exactly.
It's also an interesting choice because I think it depends on the tone you want for your film. For example, like I do think that the black and white as a choice gives us a more dramatic, even melancholic look, maybe.
Yeah, but also when we talk about lighting, usually lighting also plays a very important role, but it always comes second to, not always, but most of the time it comes second to colors, to the scenery. And when you exclude the color, when you choose black and white, the lighting takes over so much control. And I think it's also, when directors choose black and white films, it's also like a little wink to the production, to the crew, to the lighting people, that show off your work and see how actually important you are. Because lighting, in my previous experience on set, it's make or break. Without lighting, you have nothing.
Yeah.
Did you watch the movie Come and See?
No, I did not.
Do you know about it?
I know.
It is not black and white. However, it uses only natural lighting, and it's also a war movie, which it did not use black and white as I would maybe want it to use. However, the lighting was also completely excluded. So it was only natural lighting. It was only this very natural, I don't know if you've ever been in Russia in fall. I assume not.
I have not.
Neither was I. However, coming from like Eastern Europe, I can say that there aren't that many colors. So the movie, in a sense, feels black and white. It doesn't feel like there's this attention to color, and that's what I really like about it. It shows reality.
Would you say then it's an attention to take out the color?
It is.
To fade it in a way?
I think so. Yeah, definitely.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's really amazing. It's an amazing movie, but also insanely triggering.
That's it.
Yeah.
Like I'm keeping this movie to watch when I'm feeling good about everything, because I know it's a really sad movie.
It is sad, and there's not that much gore, and I think what makes it powerful, because when you talk about like the greatest conflict in human history and don't include that much gore, it makes it even more scarier. I read somewhere that is the scariest non-horror film you will ever watch.
Wow.
Although I watched recently The Green Border, which is also in black and white. I don't know, you probably heard about it.
No, I did not.
Really, it kind of sends some shockwaves through like Europe, because it talks about the border conflict on Polish and Belarusian border, and it's been like a whole story. You probably heard something about it. Yeah? It was a very messed up story where there was like a bunch of migrants that were tricked by one side to cross illegally into Europe, and then the Europeans, the Polish border guards, wouldn't let them in, so they were just stuck in a forest and children there for like 6 months, 5 months or something like that. And the film depicts their tragedy, and I think here also the choice of black and white is super important, because the scenery is beautiful, and I think that's the bad part, because when you focus on the beautiful trees, on the beautiful nature around it, you don't focus on the tragedy of the people, and
that's interesting choice, because when you think about a forest, everything you think about is color, right?
Exactly.
The greens and the reds, yellows.
Yeah.
And choosing not to have these colors in such a color marking landscape, it gives even more intensity, right?
Yeah.
I imagine.
But then again, I ask myself the question now, these tragedies, whether it be Schindler's List or the Green Border, they happened in real life and they had color. So is taking away the color also taking away from these tragedies? I kind of contradict my previous thesis that I would prefer to see them in black and white.
Well, but I think that's a dilemma on cinema, right? Like,
it is.
Is cinema faithful? Is cinema the depiction of reality, or is it reality itself? I think that's the whole dilemma of what is cinema, right?
Yeah.
We will never be able to replicate these events as they happened. So we choose, like, we end up choosing like different resources and different tools to depict it in a way to provoke certain thoughts, emotions. That's how I see it, at least.
No, definitely. It's a good question. I think it's a question that whether it be documentary or person making a film with a plot based on some real tragic events, probably ask themselves a lot.
That's it.
And I don't know, I haven't made a movie about a tragic story, so I do not have an answer to that question.
One day, who knows?
Yeah, one day.
Yeah, but I feel it all depends on the director's intentions. For example, there's a movie called Bonjour Tristesse by Otto Preminger, and they do something really interesting, in my opinion, because the movie basically is set in a ball, but it begins in a ball, and then the whole movie is basically a flashback. And then sometimes they go back to the ball, which is the present time, and the main character is so sad. She's Jane Seberg. She's interpreted by Jane Seberg, and she's so sad in the ball that all the present scenes are in black and white, and when they go to the flashbacks are in color. Which is interesting because it's not something you would expect. Normally, when the big films in the industry, they use this resource of the flashback. They put the flashback in black and white.
In black and white, yeah.
So Preminger chose to invert this logic to emphasize the feeling of nostalgia and putting not memories in black and white, but the present in black and white and the memories in color. That to me is really interesting. It's a great movie.
Definitely, and I think it is a little bit more realistic. It depicts the emotions a bit more real.
That's it.
Sometimes when we live in our own reality, everything that was in the past, even if it was worse, even if it was more difficult than what is now, seems more colorful, because then it's not reality, it's our imagination of what the reality was. Can you think about past without idolizing it, The past always seems a little bit better because you only choose what to put in these memories a little bit, You choose to interpret them. And I think that's why most people that you meet are like, oh yeah, high school days were so nice. It was such a simpler time, but then you despised it. Then it was black and white. But now when you think about it, it's colorful. It's simple. Yeah.
Yeah, you give it lightness.
And when we talk about lightness, we can also talk about color schemes. And to kind of sum up the subject, everything we've been talking about, let's talk about the complex. The more not focus on a specific color, let's focus on specific color schemes that each film chooses. And to begin that, I would like to mention one thing that I always notice. Maybe now it kind of faded away, thankfully, but every film that would describe and be presented in like Latin American countries would have this very yellowish kind of desert as filter that would, the moment you switch the border,
definitely, especially in Mexico.
Yeah, the Mexican filter. And to me, it was so funny because, you know, on one thing, you could say that it was that it was a representation of heat, right? However,
yes, I guess, but it doesn't make sense anyways.
It doesn't, because a few minutes before you were in Texas, you were in America, and then the colors are normal. But the moment you switch to Mexico, it's yellow.
I guess they just want to make it clear that there was a switch in space. But it's really curious that they choose to depict other places this way, but not different cities in the United States, for example.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's what it's about. It's about this otherness, about this kind of...
the exotic, the different, the mysterious.
And I think the same also happened with like movies that take place in the Middle East. Especially these like... I don't know, there's this one period of cinema where there was like a bunch of American military movies, and I think it was kind of because of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, they needed some propaganda. So there's like a bunch of movies coming out about good American soldiers fighting in Iraq for the liberty and oil. But they also had this scheme. But the moment they turn back, the moment they're even in their base or something,
that's it.
The color is okay. But you know, the moment they go out to the unknown, to the crazy, weird,
mysterious lands of Iraq.
Yeah. And I think it tells a lot about certain views that directors might have. The kind of the still exoticization of anything that's not Western. Yeah,
not even Western. Everything that is not them, right? And I think it also tells a lot about the tendency on like the industry of cinema, right? If they choose that this is actually a tool to depict other countries.
Yeah, and I don't know, when we can go even further, deeper. I'd say that most of the time, whenever a film is placed in Eastern Europe, that's where the color scheme gets completely gray. Not in a Tarkovsky way, not in a Comensi way, just in a like muting out the colors completely and contrasting it with very, very harsh lighting. And it's also, again, like a stereotype, you know? It's maybe it has some basis in truth, but
I mean, as a Brazilian and a Polish, we have properly to talk about this.
Exactly. Yeah, is there like how do you feel Brazil is perceived in Western cinema?
Well, I wouldn't say there's a Brazilian filter, but there's always the same references. Like, for instance, Brazil is always or Rio or the Amazon forest. There's no in between. So
green and also yellow, kind of, no?
Yeah, Rio will be always by the beach, by the sea. Yeah. A lot of women in bikinis in the middle of the street.
And there has to be a shot of the Jesus.
Shot of the Christ the Redeemer. Carnaval, always Carnaval. Or like in the middle of the forest, a lot of monkeys, like in the middle of the forest.
Yeah, and Brazil is crazy. Brazil is like super diverse, right?
Yes, Brazil is a country of continental dimensions. Yeah. It is crazy to think of Brazil this way, but anyways.
Yeah, and it's a super interesting contrast that it's either like super wild jungle, undiscovered, or these like, but also urban jungles. Isn't Brazil kind of presented as also like full of favelas and everything, you know, that this is also the focus of the camera a lot. I
mean, you can just think about the movie Rio. The movie Rio, like, I think they basically made like of the birds.
The birds, yeah.
Yeah, I think they just made a list of all the Brazilian stereotypes and decided to mash that into one film.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to know like the Hollywoodian stereotype of Brazil, watch the movie Rio. Basically, that's it.
Yeah. I mean, as a child, it was cool, but also, I don't think it aged well. I haven't returned to this film in a while.
I just watched it once, but I don't plan on watching
No.
it again, honestly.
I mean,
I have more films to watch.
Yeah. From Brazilian cinema, I know The City of God, but I mean, that's a classic. And also, it presents the favela in a more human way. And I think you can see that it's from a perspective of somebody that actually has been through it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a perfect film.
No.
It's not a film I love.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a film I think represents Brazilian cinema.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, we can make an episode on that.
Definitely.
Anyways.
Yeah, National Cinemas, National Kino it's an episode in planning. It's on the list
Definitely.
of ideas.
Well, going back to colors. Colors color schemes. Yeah. Well, I also think color schemes are a way of breaking the rules. Mm-hmm. As we were talking about Bonjour Tristesse, for example, the choose of scheme of colors is also really interesting. Mm-hmm. I can think about, for example, Le Bonheur, which is happiness, by Agnès Varda. Oh. Basically, it's a movie about, I don't know if I can... Anyways, it's a movie about a cheating. Mm-hmm. And the movie starts with all of these bright colors, these yellows, these greens, a happy family on the woods, walking, the couple kissing. You think it's gonna be a peaceful film, a love film, a love story, a romance. But then, during the film, you start to understand that things are not quite like that. Mm-hmm. And the story is not that much of a love story we thought it would. Mm-hmm. But the director never lets these brightful colors behind, which I think it's really interesting, because it would be really easy to just fade the colors, make them to tone them differently to show that there's something odd going on.
Okay, so the colors stay the same. Meanwhile, yeah. Like the
color, it's a clear cheating that is happening, mm-hmm. but the colors are still super bright. The dresses, the backgrounds.
Does the cheating ever come out?
It does.
Okay. Because I feel like if it wasn't like revealed to the other partner, then I guess the bright colors could mean the illusion that the partner is living in. No,
it is out.
Okay, I mean.
And I think that's really interesting too.
Still, yeah, amazing. It's you can play around with colors so much.
That's it.
And but also what I don't like, and I gotta say it, is like aestheticization versus meaning and symbolism. Because if we go thinking about color, okay, it just looks pretty. That's one approach, but I think it's not very inventive. Like, the first example that comes to my mind is Wes Anderson.
The one and only.
The one and only. The colors are bright. The set, the art department is gorgeous. Everything is awesome, but this meaning, there isn't much meaning, right? The meaning is kind of to keep it in a cartoonish way.
Yes, I think all of these movies as little fables. Mm-hmm. And maybe his choice of colors helps us to get in this mood.
Yeah.
Like the movie starts, we look at all these colors, we're like, okay, we're entering like a Wes Anderson story. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and these stories sometimes lack depth, and that's at least that's like my perception, that his recent movie definitely isn't. It's solely going and playing around this look pretty colors.
Asteroid City.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually, I really like when the colors turn black and white.
Yeah, I mean, we also have the black and white situation. Yeah.
That's also an interesting choice. I see it, at least.
But remind me, please, in what context is I remember it's switching to black and white. I think when the alien comes, no?
No. It was when they are doing...
Theater.
Yeah, that's it. When they're doing the rehearsals for the play. And there's the teacher and the students.
Okay, Jesus, I completely forgot that it also switches to black and white.
Yeah.
And okay, let's use the example of Asteroid City. What effect does this black and whiteness have? Is it just a simple flashback, or is it something deeper?
Actually, I did see some meaning in the film, because what I liked the most about it was when I started to observe the film as a movie about a play and a play about a movie. I feel that Wes Anderson have been playing a lot with this concept of support, of like the support he chooses for his stories. He has been really interested by theater, at least what I, as I can observe in his movies, and I think that's really interesting, because when he decides to move to this the play thing, like the movie, it's about the play, and then on the other hand, the asteroid city part, the secluded city, they're shooting a movie about a theater, because there's a theater in the movie. So I don't know if I'm being clear, but at least
I get what you mean. Definitely.
I thought it was really interesting. It was not one of my favorites, but I thought the movie was interesting. Yes,
it was okay. I really liked the alien.
He was cute.
He was like the best character, just showing up randomly and leaving. That's what we want in film.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember he was the director which I kind of started really getting into cinema with. I remember I watched Grand Hotel Budapest in an airplane, and it was one of the few movies that I could actually watch in there. So I watched it like 3 times during the same flight, and I would like fall asleep in the middle and start again, fall asleep, start again. And I remember I was so amazed by the colors. This was amazing, and yeah.
Because he does it in a really interesting way, even though I don't feel the colors specifically have meanings.
No,
I do think it's an inventive. He made his he left his mark, basically.
He did.
Like we see a screen cap, we watch a little bit of his film, and we know it's his.
Yeah.
So he did create his mark, and that's interesting too.
He did create his aesthetic. He did not create his like meaning, his symbol. Like
I mean,
Wong Kar-wai did,
Wong Kar-wai wouldn't have a TikTok trend inspired by him. I mean, he actually, maybe he did.
Like
maybe
you're really undermining TikTok.
No, I mean, I'm just saying it's a fact that Wes Anderson aesthetic is a TikTok concept.
I mean, even Iku account did it.
Yes, Iku's account did a Wes Anderson
also
vibes.
Follow us on TikTok.
Follow us on TikTok, on Instagram,
and
on
YouTube.
Twitter, on YouTube, and watch us in Spotify.
We're on Spotify. It's amazing to hear yourself on Spotify. But yeah.
Well, in that note, I think we can just thank you all for watching,
for participating. Thank you for joining us on the second episode of Luana and Julia yapping together. I hope you liked it, and till next week.
Well, see you next week. Bye bye.